order. We have two informational briefings. We're going to allow them each 4 minutes. I apologize. I wish it was longer because I think you have very valuable information to share, but in light of our workload today, that's just what I can do. We also will not have time for our informational questions for our informational presenters, but I think they both do great things and encourage you to follow up with them in your own time with the questions. So we'll begin with Aaron Davis's group. Aaron, please come forward.
Good afternoon, and Chairwoman Estes and members of the committee. My name is Erin Davis, and I serve as Executive Director for Enterprise Kansas City. I'm joined today by a couple of my colleagues. Dr. Chuck Gardner is going to be giving a presentation today. We're here to talk about a little bit about what Enterprise Kansas City does, but because we're short on time, we're going to just launch into what I think will be of great interest to this group, and that is a tool that we have developed through a grant that the state of Kansas has given Enterprise Kansas City. We're in year 1, we're requesting year 2 of that grant, but this is to employ some cybersecurity tutoring, information, and curriculum to the schools. Chuck is here and he will present about what we are doing in the schools, how Kansas schools, students, and employers are benefiting from the services that we are providing through this grant from the state of Kansas. So with that, I will hand it over to Chuck Gardner so he can quickly give you a presentation.
Chuck, thank you. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Members of the committee, thanks for having us today. I've got about 55 PowerPoint slides. Buckle up. I'm going to be here for a minute. I'm kidding. I'm not going to narrate the slides because you've got copies, so I'm just going to tell about the results and some of the really great data we've been able to collect as a result of the work we've done with the money from the legislature. So Enterprise KC has built 3 products from scratch: a data sphere, a talent sphere, and a Heartland cyber range. You can read about the talent sphere and the data sphere in the slideshow. What I'm going to talk to you about today is the Heartland cyber range. It's a hands-on, simulation-based learning and workforce validation environment for real-world experiential cybersecurity training. A lot of really great content there. Just consider for a moment the effects of practicing cybersecurity in this room. If we were to unleash some kind of malicious event on this building's network, right, the devastating effects that would happen. What the Heartland Cyber Range allows us to do is to spin up these kinds of scenarios in simulated virtual environments called a sandbox, give students access to these environments so they can see these events develop in real time, kind of track the malicious actions of the bug and isolate things. It teaches them both defensive, but also a little bit of offensive cybersecurity. We can do password attacks. We can take a look at malware bugs, pretty much any scenario that you can consider, even getting up into SCADA systems, we can replicate in these environments. And it gives students and learners the opportunity to practice this in a safe, secure, virtualized environment. I've got videos if you want to see them. We do a lot of gamification of content. We bring students together for Capture the Flag competitions, both virtually and face-to-face. They're learning social skills, all sorts of opportunities that they wouldn't get in a traditional 9-to-5 classroom, if you will. These are experiences that are going to help them become more marketable. Through tools like Talent Sphere, which EKC has also built, they're going to connect to employers, and they're going to, in real time, with live updates, understand the job responsibilities that are out there. DataSphere is scraping job boards looking for trends in employment history across the region in real time. And we're working with teachers, with higher ed institutions, with K-12 to create these pathways that are as live as possible to the needs of employers in the region. And we're having success across the state of Kansas. I've got some data in here that relates to, the resources that we have in the region, including 13 NSA designated centers of academic excellence in the region, 74 institutions offering cyber degrees. We have NSA designated research universities, 25 government and military facilities, approximately 100 cybersecurity enterprises. A lot of really great opportunities to employ this talent. We just need to locate the talent. And we're not looking in Kansas City or Topeka, or we are looking in those regions, right? But these resources that we're building give us the opportunity to reach into the most rural districts, into the most disadvantaged neighborhoods, and find the students with the skills and abilities to become the next generation cybersecurity workforce. So we appreciate the opportunity provided by the legislature. I will leave you with the PowerPoint, and again, our contact info is on the last slide if you have any questions. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Chuck, thank you so much. I love what you guys are doing for Kansas kids, and I feel like we're giving you the bum's rush today just because of time circumstances. But please know, I really sincerely appreciate the experiences that you're giving our kids. It's very important. Thank you so much. And they are going to be in K-12 today. So if you think about what you just heard as an appetizer and would like the main course, tune in to K-12. So thank you guys very much. KBOR, I'm going to hold you guys off for the end of the meeting. And again, I apologize for the time crunch that we are in. The first thing that we're going to do is adopt the minutes. There are 3 sets of minutes from our last 3 meetings that were emailed out to you. A motion to adopt the minutes as published would be in order by Representative McNorton. And is there a second? Second from Representative Brantley. Any discussion, corrections, or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, would you like to close your motion?
I close.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of adopting the minutes as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, and the minutes are adopted. So we're going to re-engage our brains into yesterday, and yesterday we were partway through working Senate Bill 263, and I'm going to have Jason just give a short reminder of what that bill is and the 2 amendments that we already adopted.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 263 required the State Department of Education to adopt best practice guidelines for conducting active shooter drills in public schools and accredited non-public schools, and defines active shooter drills. It then requires the governing body of those schools to adopt policies that are consistent with the best practice guidelines published by the State Department of Education. And then the bill also had provisions regarding violence prevention, training, and encouragement of student leadership and prevention of violence in the school. Those provisions are section 4 and 5 of the bill on page 5. Amendments adopted yesterday include removing the prohibition on conducting active shooter drills for grades kindergarten through 5 and redefining active shooter drill with respect to grades kindergarten through 5 and grades 6 through 12. Also, technical amendment moving the language on allowing for parental opt-out from active shooter drills to be placed in an appropriate location on page 4 of the bill on line 29.
Thank you very much. Somebody did ask yesterday about the way evidence base was defined, and I just wanted to let you know that I received information that that language comes from the Federal STOP Act, and that's the definition they use for evidence base. So that's where that came from. I do have an amendment I'd like to do, and then others are also welcome to make amendments. And this next amendment is very simple. It just restores the 24-hour notice. And Jason will pass that out. I'm good.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, yes, the provision to require the schools to provide 24-hour prior notice of conducting an active shooter drill was stricken under the Senate amendment. It is reinstated on page 4 and line 29 to require that. There is the provision that if notice cannot be provided at least 24 hours prior to an active shooter drill, the notice shall be provided within 24 hours of the conclusion of such drill. To correspond with this, there's also language added up in line 13 of page 4 to require the State Department to, as part of its best practice guidelines, provide the alternative safety education for students who do not participate in active shooter drills.
Any questions on the amendment for Jason? Representative McNorton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason, I know there's other drills that the schools run. Do any of them have an opt-out like this, just out of curiosity, or is that at the will of the school?
There's nothing in statute providing for a parental opt-out from, say, fire or tornado or crisis drills, and so that would be more at the discretion of the local Board of Education.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Jason? Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I move adoption of the amendment as presented, and second from Representative Steele. Last call for discussion. Seeing none, I close my amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you all very much. Does anybody else have any? Okay, Representative Steele and then Schmoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have an amendment for this bill. While they're getting it passed out, Madam Chair, you want me to go ahead?
Please proceed.
So my amendment would be working on page 5 of the bill, and it would be striking sections 4 and striking sections 5. The purpose for this amendment is that section 4, this teaching is going to fall to classroom teachers. Our classroom teachers are not experts in violence prevention training. I understand that this section does talk about having evidence-based curriculum, but violence training requires somebody to be knowledgeable about trauma-informed things. And I do not want this passed upon our teachers when experts should be the ones that are doing this. This section also does not allow for any students to be opt-out, as this is not a drill, as the previous amendment was specifically noting. This section also does not allow for teachers to opt out if they have had previous trauma and previous violence, and this could be triggering for them to be teaching, and I don't support that. So that is the reason for striking section 4. Section 5, I would also like to strike, mainly because this section is having students participate in violence prevention planning, and that is not a role of a student in our schools. This is not appropriate for students to be participating in planning violence prevention. Also on lines 37 and 38 on page 5, we already had a bill that was brought forth this year specifically with regards to sexual abuse and assault, and we noted the importance of experts teaching these things. And again, that's not for something for children to be planning. And so that would be the reason for my amendment, Madam Chair.
Thank you for explaining your amendment. Revisor Long, is there anything you'd like to add or clarify?
Madam Chair, you need to see on page 5, all on lines 9 through 38 would be stricken from the bill, and the conforming amendment on page 1, line 8.
Questions for the maker of the amendment? Representative Ruiz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative, could you repeat, if the teacher has gone through some type of trauma, situation of violence, they still can't opt out, they have to be put in the center of this? Is that my understanding?
Madam Chair, Representative, no, this section originally didn't allow for a teacher to opt out, and I find it very important that a teacher should be able to opt out of that, and this didn't, so that's why another reason I wanted to strike.
Any other questions for the maker of the amendment? Representative Getz, or Chair Getz? I was going to get to that next. Any other questions for the maker of the amendment? would you like to move your amendment? I think Chair Getz is anxious to second it.
Madam Chair, I move.
And a second from Chairman Getz. Last call for discussion. Seeing none, would you like to close your amendment, your motion?
Madam Chair, I close the motion.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And the motion carries. Representative, do you have any other amendments?
No, ma'am.
The chair moves to Representative Schmoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Upon speaking with my local law enforcement, it became very clear to me that they already have things that they are doing with our school district. I imagine that that's going on across the state, given the importance of what we're doing here. Upon suggestion from my local law enforcement, I have an amendment that would go ahead and keep the prohibition from K through 8th grade on the simulations, but give local control in case students from 9th through 12th would like to go through the simulation training.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I started reading your amendment. I apologize.
The amendment itself would continue the prohibition from K through 8th grade students on the simulation training, but it would give local control back to the school district to determine whether or not they wanted to allow for 9th through 12th graders to opt into the simulation training. And again, it's not forcing anybody to do that. It's just giving local control so that they can determine what's best in their area for their students.
Thank you. Jason, would you like to review the amendment, please?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the amendment appears on the bottom of page 4, top of page 5 with new section 3. The language at the bottom of page 4 prohibiting schools from conducting, sponsoring, or permitting active shooter simulations would only apply to school property where students in grades kindergarten through 8 regularly attend. The new subsection at the top of page 5 that would be added would grant discretion to the local governing board to conduct active shooter simulations for property where grades 9 through 12 regularly attend. And then the caveat is still retained there on page 5 for law enforcement agencies to conduct tactical training exercises without student participation if they so choose, with approval from the governing body.
Questions for Jason or the maker of the amendment? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure I've got this. So there would be no simulation drills in the buildings of K through 8, even when there weren't kids there?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, no, the caveat on page 5 would still allow law enforcement agencies to conduct tactical training exercises on those school properties without any student participation and outside of regular school hours, so there would be no students present on the property during those tactical exercises. But no active shooter simulations, as defined in the bill, could be conducted in those buildings with students being present.
Did that answer your question, Representative?
Could I have one more?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Could the school district be running these drills? Or does it have to be, like, will teachers be involved?
Madam Chair, under the balloon, there are now 2 different activities being described. There are active shooter simulations, which are defined in the bill, and then there are law enforcement tactical training exercises. With respect to active shooter simulations, those would not be permitted to be conducted or permitted by the school district in K through 8 buildings whatsoever. active shooter simulations would be allowed at the discretion of the governing body in 9 through 12 buildings. Separate from that, law enforcement tactical training exercises, which can only be conducted without any students present, could still be performed on any school property with permission of the governing body.
Did that answer your question, Representative?
I think so.
Okay. Representative McNorton? Oh, Representative Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what if you're a small rural school and you have all grades in the same building?
Jason?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, then active shooter simulations would not be permitted on the school property because students in grades K through 8 would be regularly in attendance.
Any other questions about the amendment or for the maker of the amendment? Representative McNorton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bringer of the amendment said something about that the students could opt in to be part of that, or did I misunderstand you? Just, I don't see that in this balloon.
Yes.
Representative Schmoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, if we are opening it up to the grades 9 through 12, then the local school board would be determining if that would be appropriate for their area for the kids to be involved in those simulations. So it gives them back local control for the older students.
Did that answer your question?
No. So let me ask Jason. So in page 5, line 5, number 2, no student participates in such exercise. So I'm a little confused on whether a student could participate or not. So if you could clear that up, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So the subsection being added regarding grades 9 through 12 is for active shooter simulations. So if the Board of Education or governing body decides they want to have active shooter simulations conducted on school property, it can be done for their high schools, grades 9 through 12. The language on line 5 relates to tactical training exercises conducted by law enforcement agencies. And so if the law enforcement agency is conducting a tactical training exercise on school property, there can be no students participating in those exercises.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or discussion on the amendment? Representative Featherston.
I guess I just still have some concerns. So now the schools are not going to be able to practice in grade school, middle school buildings, even when the kids aren't there. And the whole point of this bill brought forth by Sandy Hook was first graders being slaughtered at their school.
Representative Schmoy.
The simulation and tactical training are two entirely different things. Simulation is more so like Alice training, where you are engaged in someone wandering around the school, presenting themselves as the active shooter at the time. And then you are practicing how your response would be at whether you are a student or staff. In this case, it would be, under this amendment, 9th through 12th grade students could be opted in. The tactical training is an entirely separate thing, to where that's where law enforcement can go into the buildings and actually simulate on their own what it would look like in a crisis situation. And they can run their own simulation, just them. So they will still be involved. They will still be able to practice the response. It's just that students are not there for that.
Featherston, I'm sorry, Representative Featherston, did you want to follow up?
I would, because I know your motives are good here. So I'm just trying to make myself figure out. I guess what I'm seeing, line 41, no school shall conduct, sponsor, or permit any active shooter simulation on school property where students in grades kindergarten through 8 regularly attend school. So are you meaning like there should be no teachers, no school personnel, only these law enforcement tactical squads?
No.
Representative Schmoy.
No, that's not at all. When you look at it as two different things, because what we're dealing with here is the simulation. So that's what staff and students could be involved in. So if on a Monday they do a simulation training, then the amendment itself makes it to where K through 8th grade cannot be involved in someone wandering around and presenting themselves, pretending to be playing the role of active shooter. In the amendment, we changed that to at the high school level on that Monday, then if the school board has deemed it appropriate for their school, then they could have that training for 9th through 12th grade. I believe that the opt-out still applies to this, so parents have ultimate control on that. Then, when it comes to Saturday, then the police department or the local law enforcement could run their own tactical training when no students are there. So we are still doing both things. It's just that I'm trying to make sure that our 9th through 12th graders have the option to learn how to run, hide, and fight.
Representative Featherston, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think I'm still in a conundrum, but that's a me thing.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the maker of the amendment or for the reviser? Seeing none, I'm sorry, Reviser Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I just want to clarify with the maker of the motion that if the intent is to still include parental opt-out for 9 through 12, that part of this amendment, it's not shown in the balloon that was distributed, but part of the amendment would be to amend the previously adopted amendment to include active shooter simulations in the opt-out language. Is that the intent?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want to force things on parents.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, Representative Schmoy, Representative Boatman, did you have a question?
No, I was just doing my best impression of Chairman Gates and wanting to second this.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but all of a sudden okay. Representative Schmoy, you may make your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move my motion.
And is there a second? Representative Boatman, last call for discussion. Representative, you may close your motion.
I close. Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. And the amendment passes. Is there any, Representative Schmoy, did you have any other amendments?
No, ma'am.
All right. Does anybody else have any amendments? Seeing none, then I'll move us to discussion on the bill. Anybody, Representative McNorton?
This would be for Jason. Something just popped in my head as we were discussing that last amendment, but we talk about the 24-hour notification of parents. That's for a simulation for any of these, so if they're doing something in the middle of June, we still need to notify the parents, the district, that they're going to be doing this on Saturday at the school, so people don't freak out, or how would that, I know in Topeka when they've done that, they put it on the news, all kinds of stuff in advance, so people should be aware of what's going on, but I just had a question on that.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, it is my understanding that with the last amendment, the 24-hour notice would apply to both active shooter drills and active shooter simulations. If the representative would like it to also apply to any tactical training exercises conducted when no students are present, and the committee would like to adopt that as part of its amendment, then we can do so.
I would,
Representative McNorton.
I would like to make a motion as a conceptual amendment to include tactical training to be included in a 24-hour notification.
Is there a second? I have lots of peace signs. I heard Chair Getz first, so we'll take it from Chairman Getz. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, would you like to close your amendment?
I close.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you all very much. Jason, do we need a motion to give you the flexibility to wordsmith when we pass it up? Okay. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none, I'd make a motion that we pass the bill, and I think it would be a House substitute bill at this point. The House substitute for Senate Bill 263 as amended, and also allow the reviser to make the technical adjustments as necessary. Is there a second? From former Chair Hubert, thank you for your second. Any discussion on the bill? Last call for discussion. Seeing none, I will close my motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you all very much. That was if you go to the restaurant and you order the steak that everybody says we'll give it to you for free if you can eat it all, that was the amount of work that we just got accomplished. And I am very pleased and respectful of how well everybody works. And we're going to try our luck with the next bill. And we will begin working Senate Bill 340, the co-requisite courses. Jason, if you would like, and this is one that passed the Senate 40-0, if you would like to refresh our memories. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 340 pertains to the Kansas Parma Scholarship Act and the awards that are made under that program. The awards currently cannot be used for any remedial course unless such course is offered in a co-requisite format. The Senate has amended that to clarify that it would not be used for any remedial course, including any remedial hours that are offered as part of a co-requisite course. And so I think, as was explained, if you have a co-requisite course that consists of 5 total hours, 2 of which are remedial course hours, then the scholarship award would not be eligible to be used for those 2 remedial course hours as part of that co-requisite course.
Thank you. I'm going to begin by changing the enforcement date as an amendment. Is there a second? Till July 1, yes. To publication on the register, thank you. Is there a second to that amendment? Representative Steele, thank you very much. Any discussion? You'll be next, I promise. Seeing no discussion, I close my amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you all very much. Does anybody else have any amendments for this bill? Seeing none, discussion on the bill would be in order. Seeing none, I move that Senate Bill 340 be passed favorably as amended. Is there a second? Representative Brantley. Last call for discussion. Seeing none, the chair closes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We will go to Senate Bill 406, which is about Pell Grants, and we'll begin by having the reviser refresh our memories. And I will remind everyone, this is a bill that passed the Senate 40-0.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 406 would enact new law to require the governor, in consultation with the State Workforce Development Board, to approve workforce training programs for the federal workforce Pell Grants if those programs meet the requirements under the federal statute. The Workforce Development Board is also directed to establish internal processes for determining eligibility of programs, coordinate with training programs with other state and federal workforce programs, and align leverage state monies to support implementation and expansion of these programs. And it would go into effect on July 1st.
Thank you. Any questions for Jason on the bill? Seeing none, I have a motion to change the effective date to publication on the register. Is there a second? It's Representative Stockstill's turn. Thank you, Representative. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I close my amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Anybody else have any amendments for the bill? Yes, I said register. Seeing none, I move that we pass Senate Bill 406 as amended favorably. Is there a second? Representative Stogstill. Thank you for your second. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, I close. Oops, I'm sorry, Representative Featherston. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems like we don't have any choice but to pass this, so I'll probably be supporting it. But I would just like to say I don't support the big, beautiful bill that forced this, and I don't actually think this is going to do anything very beneficial for our state students or workforce.
Your thoughts are noted. Any other discussion on the bill? Seeing none, I close on my motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, and the bill passes. Okay, we will now move to Senate Bill 381. Jason, would you like to refresh the committee's memory, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 381 does two things. First, it creates new law to require the state board to develop curriculum, materials, and guidelines, and for the school districts to provide instruction to students on understanding the negative impacts of communist and socialist regimes and ideologies. Excuse me. Second, the bill would amend current law to require students pass an American civics examination that is similar to the examination that is provided for naturalization of for U.S. citizenship, with the same number of questions and similar topics. And then the bill also defines accredited to be accredited by the State Board of Education and include dual accreditation, as the American Civics exam would be applicable to both public school districts and accredited non-public schools.
Thank you. Any questions for Jason about the bill? Seeing none, I have a motion to change the effective date to publication of the register. Is there a second? Thank you, Representative Hubert. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing none, I close my motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, and the motion carries. We're on the bill as amended. Does anybody else have any amendments for this bill? Representative Boatman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have an amendment.
Would you like to explain your amendment while it's distributed?
Yes, Madam Chair. My amendment would simply add, let me get the paper, would simply add the terminology, well, the word fascist in the appropriate places of the bill that also describe communist and socialist regimes and ideologies. The intent of this bill really seems to be to teach school children about, as it bolded here, the negative impacts of the listed regimes and ideologies as it relates to American democracy, and I strongly believe that fascism should be included in that list, and so that is the intention of my amendment.
Thank you. Is there a second to the Representative Ruiz? You were the first hand I saw. We'll call you the second. Jason, would you like to explain the amendment?
Madam Chair, I believe the representative adequately explained it. It would simply add fascist to the list along with communist and socialist in terms of regimes and ideologies that must be provided instruction on.
Thank you very much. Is there discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, Representative, you may close your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I close and move my amendment.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and the amendment carries. Any other amendments on this bill? Representative Getz.
Madam Chair, I have a conceptual amendment that I think is.
Chairman, is your microphone on?
I think so. There we go.
Then now we hear you. Go ahead.
Possibility of a conceptual amendment that I'll explain and see if you think it's in order, but to exclude the elementary years from this bill and move it to, that can get termed differently in different districts. So if that goes up to 5th grade, if that goes up to 6th grade, or if that goes up to 4th grade, depending on that school district's jurisdiction of how they define those. But it would be kind of striking, in a sense, teaching the negative impacts of these, moving that up to where they're still teaching it already. Kind of checked with districts. They have curriculum that is approaching these topics, but it's not explicitly, in a sense, teaching the negative impacts of, and that would only start in the middle school and high school years.
Your hope is a good hope today.
Good hope.
If you're a regular education watcher, you get the joke. That is a conceptual amendment that I think is easily understood by the committee. You are welcome to make that conceptual amendment.
I move my amendment.
Okay, and I have a second from Representative Stogsdill. I will just opine, I'm probably, and thankfully, I'm really glad, I think I'm probably one of the only people in this building who has had family members put in jail by a communist country for their beliefs. And I think it is a lot for a young person to understand what that's about. Any other discussion on the amendment? Representative Pishney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine's just clarification, Representative. So are you saying in Section 1A and B that we would reword something to exclude elementary school, or how are you, or maybe the revisor, how would we include what's being suggested? Because I'm not against it. As a matter of fact, I favor that, but I just wonder how it would be worded within the bill.
Jason.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, as I understand the amendment and the motion, we would reword the language in both subsections A and B so that it would provide students in non-elementary grades as designated by the school district with an understanding of the negative impacts of communist, fascist, and socialist regimes and ideologies.
That makes sense. Thank you.
And Jason, that would be beginning on line 12 and line 15.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions about the amendment? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree with the chair and with our 21-year professional educator that testified yesterday that this content is inappropriate for this age range, and I still believe it really borders on indoctrination, so I would like to remove that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about the amendment? Representative Stogsdill.
Yes, Representative, the negative impacts is language that was added by the Senate, and that has not been removed in any of the amendments adopted by the committee thus far. Yes, it is in line 13 of the bill, and then again in line 16. No, the provision as amended by the Senate is to adopt materials and guidelines to provide an understanding of the negative impacts of communist, fascist, and socialist regimes and ideologies, and that school districts provide instruction to students on an understanding of the negative impacts of those regimes.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments, discussion about the amendment? Seeing none, Representative, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I close.
All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. And the motion carries. Do we have any more amendments for this bill? Seeing none, I move passage of Senate Bill 381 as amended favorably. Is there a second? Second from Representative Steele. Any last call for discussion? Representative Hubert, Getz, and Featherston.
I just wanted a discussion.
Okay.
Is that okay? Or whoever needs to go first. So the 100 question, does anybody on the committee or revisers or research, how many times does that happen in a school setting as far as, are there other tests that are that long? I mean, I know our state assessment has actually been reduced to 40 questions. And this one's 100 questions and is for graduate. I just didn't know if that, I don't have an amendment for it or conceptual. It gives me and I understand why, as far as similar to the United States Citizenship Immigration Services.
Tell you that I had a similar bill in 2021, and even with the naturalization test, I believe it's 20 questions that they used, pulled at random from the database of questions. But I believe that even when I had the bill, that was the intent, that it would be the same as how the naturalization test for new citizens was done. But I would refer to the reviser in regards to the language in this bill if it differs from what I tried to do with mine back in 21.
So I guess my question is with since it's stating consists of 100 questions, that the substantially similar, if that is not, in a sense, correct information, which I don't know, and if the revisers or research could maybe give us a little bit more information on that, of just being consistent on that issue.
I see that Revisor Long is looking at that, looking for that information.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the 2025 naturalization civics test is an oral test consisting of 20 questions from the list of 128 civics test questions.
Thank you. I think Representative Steele wanted to comment on that topic as well.
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. 100 questions might sound lengthy, but I think it proves competency. And I think that's what we're going for with this bill is understanding the importance of their rights as a citizen.
Thank you for your feedback. Did you have any other further comments on that topic, Representative Getz?
I just wonder if it needs to be a graduation requirement then, if it is for competency, if it has to be a graduation requirement. No motion, but just making the statement.
Okay. In the queue, I have Representative Hubert, Featherston, Boatman, and Stockstill.
Am I next? I'm sorry, I wasn't fully following that list, but
You are next.
thank you, Madam Chair. Again, in 2021, when I chaired this committee, I did introduce a similar bill. This bill goes a little further than mine, and I did make an honest attempt to work with the Department of Education to do it in a way that I felt like was workable and was not a make or break tests on its own standalone. It would roll it in to a teacher of the civics class with the other things that were being taught to pass that class, but it was not a standalone make or break test in my bill, and that was ordered to accommodate concerns that were brought to me in the process of working the bill. And again, I understand the reason why I did that was, again, an attempt to compromise to get something done because I was being accused of trying to cut the graduation rate for students who didn't pass this test. And again, you know, if it is a graduation requirement, I believe that there are requirements to pass any class that if you're going to require it for graduation. But that was my intent back then, where this bill goes farther than what I did. Even in doing that, my bill was vetoed. And so, again, the bill as written right now does go further. And, you know, I support the intent of this bill, and I appreciate the discussion is going on right now to make it better. But with that, I will just simply say I will be supporting the bill because of my ongoing desire to see civics education as a part of a requirement for all students to require the skills that we need for them to be productive citizens after they graduate from high school. And I will tell you also, as I've worked with the Department of Education, there have been attempts to continue at that level to do some things that, in my opinion, get into civics engagement, not civics education. And most of the efforts that have been instituted in regards to efforts from the Department of Education and the State Board of were, in my opinion, more civics engagement, not civics education. And that's why I still believe there's a need for bills like this to make the difference in what is being done now versus what should be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hubert. Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to oppose this bill as I have opposed this intrusion in curriculum all 6 years that I've been here. I'd like to start with, I think the 100-question test is unreasonable. The fact that you can start taking it in 7th grade, and we discussed this in committee when we had this bill years ago, I will guarantee you parents in my district will start having their 7th graders start taking this test, and they will take it over and over and over. And none of that fosters learning and understanding. It fosters regurgitation, and regurgitation does not equal learning. And also, God only knows how much that will cost at that point. And I will point out, one of my school districts is possibly having to cut 5th grade strings. So I will be doing nothing that could possibly make that a higher chance. The other thing, one of our out-of-state proponents yesterday couldn't even get the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution correct. So perhaps they are not the best source of curriculum and advice for this committee. Graduation requirement, we have graduation requirements developed by the State Board of Education in consultation with educational professionals throughout the state. That does not include this test, which again does not foster learning or understanding. I would also like to state that my citizenship came from my birth here in this country, and I shouldn't have to take a test on citizenship to prove I know what it is. And I just think this is a gross violation of local control.
Thank you. Representative Boatman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a point of clarification, could I ask the reviser to repeat what information he provided about, I think it was the difference between like 128 questions that were available and 20 questions that were asked?
Yes, you may. Jason.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, the 2025 naturalization civics test was an oral test consisting of 20 questions from a list of 128 civics test questions.
Thank you, Revisor. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would be opposed to this being a graduation requirement. I had my stepson here yesterday as a shadow, and he sat in committee, and we were discussing this, and afterwards, he said, the only test I've ever taken that was 100 questions was the SAT. He's like, a civics test that's 100 questions long is, in his words, insane. And I would tend to agree. I also have a big problem with the idea of requiring school children who I would assume are very predominantly already U.S. citizens be required to pass a test to graduate high school that I would assume most of us in this room would probably fail. I know I probably would fail it.
100%.
And also, if I remember correctly, there's a bill floating around this building somewhere that would seek to limit/eliminate the ability for students to exercise their First Amendment rights to free speech and protest. And so it's interesting to me what message we're trying to send to children, that they need to memorize answers about who their president and their representatives are, but not actually allowing them to engage in any sort of First Amendment activity that would actually provide experiential learning for what it means to be a responsible American citizen. So I, at this time, cannot support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Stogsdill, and then Representative Wolf. That's the end of my list, and we'll move on after that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a quick question about this. It says you have to have a passing grade on this. What's a passing grade? What's the percentage?
Jason, would you like to answer that?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, as is not specified under the language as written, as my understanding, it would be up to the governing body of the school as to what constitutes a satisfactory passing of the examination.
So, a school district, depending on their determination of civics and what you should learn, it could be 60% in one school district and 85% in another school district?
I will note for the committee that under the naturalization process, it is 12 of the 20 questions must be answered correctly to pass. I don't know if the school districts would take that as guidance for passing rate on this examination or not.
Okay, but it would be up to their discretion, basically, then.
Yes, I think it would be a local determination.
Okay, and part of that also fits in with what we were talking about. This would be taught as part of a civics class or a American history class, something along that line. What would happen if they needed that class to pass and get a high school diploma, and they got an A- in that class, but they didn't pass the civics test that was a part of that class? They still wouldn't be able to get their high school diploma because they didn't pass that one piece of that particular high school class?
Madam Chair, yes, they would have to pass the examination. And I would just also note on the previous question that there is provision for the State Board of Education to, at their discretion, adopt rules and regulations, and that includes establishing passing scores, but that's, again, at the discretion of the State Board whether they would do so.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
My vice chair did a little bit of quick math, and 12 questions out of 20 is also 60%. And that is the threshold most districts use for most of our classes. There are a few districts who, and that's called a 10-point scale. There are a few districts who use a 7-point scale. So yeah, in Kansas, it's possible to pass high school with straight Ds. and I'll leave that where it is. When I said the list, I had accidentally scratched out Representative Brantley's name earlier, so I'll go to Representative Brantley and then Wolf, and then we will move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After our meeting the other day, I asked the revisers to pull the data for states that have a civics requirement. And I have 24 states. Alabama requires a score of 60% on a civics test given by the U.S. Citizenship Immigration required for a government course. Arkansas requires a 60%, same thing, required in the course. Arizona has a 70% on a civics test required in the course. Florida has a civics literacy required for students taking U.S. government. Idaho has state civics and government standards, which would include the assessment, and it's given by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Indiana requires each high school to administer civics tests by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Iowa, local school boards required to administer multiple choice tests consisting of the questions contained in the civics test by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration. Kentucky has graduation requirements include a half-credit course of civic literacy for scoring on a test from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Louisiana, each student enrolled in civics must be administered a test based upon the civics from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Michigan, content standards for high school social studies must cover the same content as the 100 questions from the civics test by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigrations. Missouri, passing score on the civics test by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services required for graduation from high school. Montana, encouraged to administer a civics test given by U.S. citizenship. Nebraska, Committee on American Civics, made up of 3 members of the local school board. They are to give the test by the U.S. Immigration. Nevada, passing score on the civics test by U.S. citizenship. I can go on and on. There's 24 states that require the same thing we're talking about.
Thank you, Representative. That's very helpful to see what other states are doing. Representative Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Stodsdale answered my question. However, in listening to her, we don't have anything that says that it has to be like you ask the question, they have to write the answer. It could be multiple choice. There's nothing that says what it has to be, correct?
Jason, would you like to answer that question?
Madam Chair, the bill requires that the examination be, that the questions be substantially similar to the questions that are administered under the naturalization civics exam.
Research, if you could check to see if those are multiple choice. Representative Wolf?
So she was reading and saying that naturalization sometimes gives the test in some of those states. Is that correct?
I think she was saying they use the same questions.
Okay, they just get them from them. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Representative Boatman raise a hand. I'm going to go to you, and then I believe that Representative McNorton has a conceptual amendment that I think would solve a few problems. Representative Boatman for the second time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the information provided by Representative Brantley. I would just be curious to know how long those tests are on an average, since we're talking about a 100-question test here.
Representative Brantley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I understand correctly, and please, Jason, correct me, it sounds like it's a 128-question bank, and 20 questions will be asked. Am I misunderstanding that?
Research, I believe, has an answer for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Boatman, the other states that have implemented this test do use 100 questions as the test as well.
Did you find if those are multiple choice?
Madam Chair, some states have turned it into a multiple choice test. The immigration test is oral, and there are correct answers, and there can be multiple correct answers, but it is an oral test, so they're not multiple choice options.
Okay, thank you very much. Representative McNorton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. great discussion on this. I'm a little concerned with that, thinking about the 100 tests, the time it'll take. It's a lot to ask for students, and I actually took the test online and got 100%, but it's bragging on myself. First time ever I've got 100% on a test in my life, but I would like to make a conceptual amendment if we could, if you can bear with me here. I'd like to make it the 20 out of the 128 and just mirror the U.S. citizenship and immigration test. With that, I'd also like to add that it's a multiple choice, but our students need to get at least 80% correct if they do have the multiple choice instead of oral answers. So that's my conceptual amendment. We can discuss it and see if we can go anywhere.
Is there a second to the amendment? Representative Schmoy. Is there questions for the carrier of the amendment or the reviser? Representative Pishney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just point of clarification. Your amendment, Representative, would the 80%, 20 out of 128 multiple choice, I get all of that, but it would still be a requirement to pass that back to whoever's example that was about, I guess it was Representative Hubert. If they're in a civics class and they have an A, but they only get a 60% on this test, does that keep them from graduating? So I just wondered how it intertwines with the graduation requirement, and as long as it's clarified, I'm okay.
You know, the way I conceptually, it would still be that case that you just said, they'd have to pass this test to graduate. You know, we could make that a requirement in the civics class, but if they don't pass civics class, they aren't going to graduate still. So we could put it either or in either place. You have to pass this test to get a passing grade in civics class, but you still have to have that as one of your requirements to pass high school. So I'm open to putting it wherever, but the outcome's going to be the same.
Let's keep it as you originally had
Okay.
it then. Any other questions for the carrier? Representative Hubert.
Our students to learn, not an ultimate expectation of all the other things we want them to learn. But I also believe that the old motto, if at first you don't succeed, try again, still pertains to allowing a student, if they don't pass it the first time, they can go back and take it again. And a teacher can use it as a teaching tool, even at the beginning of a class, to put it out there, start teaching to it, and use it as a tool to teach the students, again, some very simple, easy facts and knowledge of our Constitution, of our government, that are very beneficial to learn. And so again, I just want to remind people, you can take it as many times as necessary in order to pass and be able to meet the requirements of the bill.
Yes, you may.
Good point, and my conceptual amendment here would not change that part of it. They could take the test multiple times, multiple grade levels. It's just required sometime before they get out of high school, they do pass it.
Any other questions for the Representative Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only thing would be, by making it multiple choice, it's not going to be just like they hand it down to us. So who's to say that someone doesn't make the multiple choice, obvious, like the color green instead of, I mean, it does give them something else they have to add to it, and I don't know, just thinking.
I think our teachers are outstanding professionals. I personally wouldn't worry about that, but Representative McNorton?
Yeah, I want to echo the chair. Also, when you look online, some of these sample tests are out there, have multiple choice. So, it would be easy to come up with that type of test, and I'm sure the Department of Ed or the State School Board would be able to handle that pretty easy.
Representative Stogsdill.
Madam Chair, would the same test be given to every student? I mean, because, you could have 20 pretty easy questions from one school district and 20 that were significantly more extensive or whatever.
I think you're still mirroring the national citizenship test, and that's a bank of 128 questions. I don't think his amendment touches that. But I'll let Jason clarify if I'm wrong.
Madam Chair, I'd just point out that the bill, again, provides the State Board of Education may adopt rules and regulations and includes in those rules and regulations a model examination for use by school districts or accredited non-public schools.
Yes, Representative McNorton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would think, without knowing the details, that not everybody who goes to take a naturalization test gets the same questions, because they're random number, 20 out of 128. So depending when you went in, whatever day, you might have a different test than the day you did before. So I would imagine that could be the same. If we mirror what they're doing, it'd be the same situation.
Did you have a follow-up, Representative?
Well, again, my concern was that who picks those test questions? And obviously, if you have 100 questions on a test, there are some that are going to be obviously more simple than others. And it just seems that it would be somewhat unfair if one school district was going through and whoever picks the test questions would be looking for the simplest ones to make sure that most kids pass. And in another school district, you could have them doing the most complicated ones.
Again, I feel comfortable trusting our professionals in the Department of Education. Representative McNorton, and then I'll ask for, you're okay. Was there a second to the conceptual amendment, Representative Schmoy? Last call for discussion. Representative, you may close your amendment.
I close. Thank you, Madam.
All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. The amendment carries. We are back on the bill. Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, I close my motion to pass Senate Bill 381 as amended favorably and was seconded by Representative Steele earlier. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? No. Is there anybody who would like to be recorded? Representative Featherston, Boatman, Ruiz, and Stogstill. Thank you all for your discussion. We are going to move straight into our hearing on Senate Bill 384, and we'll begin by having Jason refresh our memory or explain the bill. This is our first time to hear this one, sorry.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 384 would extend the application deadline for authorization to operate as a public innovative district from December 1st to May 1st of a school year, and then add provisions to deem the application approved if it is not approved or denied by the state board within 45 days of submission. Under current law, there are statutes that allow school districts to form a coalition of public innovative districts that exempt them from certain statutes that are applicable to school districts to operate in more innovative manners. There is an application process in which the school district applies to the State Board of Education currently by not later than December 1st of the school year prior to the school year in which they plan to start operating as an innovative district. The bill would move that up to May 1st of the school year prior for that application. It also sets a 90-day timeline for the State Board to consider and review the application. Under amendments by the Senate, this would be reduced to a 45-day timeline. The bill also amends another part of the act. It deals with approval by the coalition. So if enough districts have formed to form the coalition, then then a new school district gets approval from the coalition before they submit their application to the state board. And there's language in there that if the coalition does not approve or deny the request to apply to be an innovative district within 30 days, then that request is deemed approved as well to go along with that automatic approval change earlier in the bill. This would go into effect on the Kansas Register, so it would be effective sooner than July 1st. It did pass the Senate on a vote of 32-7, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Representative McNorton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know this is part of the original bill, but could you explain innovative districts to us, please?
I think the best way to explain innovative districts is to point to some language under current law. Let's see if I can find it again here. Yeah, so on page 2, starting line 24, innovative districts shall be exempt from all laws and rules and regulations that are applicable to school districts, but then right below that in paragraph 2, they would be still subject to laws that you think of as are applicable to all school districts. This includes the School Finance Act, the Special Education Act, Virtual School Act, Open Records, Open Meetings Acts, the election laws that apply to school board member elections. Those would all still apply. So you have a list of statutes that would still apply to those, but other more specific statutes governing the operation of school districts, these innovative districts would be exempt from.
Thank you. Just a reminder, we did hear presentations in both education committees from people who were doing the innovative district testing. Any other questions for Jason? Seeing none, Jason, thank you very much. We do have two conferees on this bill. The first is a proponent, Dr. Tracy Frederick, Executive Director of the Kansas School Board Resource Center. In light of the time, I need to give each conferee 1 minute. We do have your testimony, and I believe that Tracy is online. Tracy, you may begin, and just a reminder, 1 minute, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak as a proponent for this testimony to support of Senate Bill 384. I'm going to quickly tell you that we support the revision to remove the application deadline because it allows those districts working toward improvement to do so immediately. We also know how precious every week, every month, and every year is in the educational development of students. The urgency cannot be overstated. We support the revision to the timeline to the district application review from 90 to 45 days and to be deemed approved if they're not enacted upon within the sufficient timeline. Because remember, 90 days in the life cycle of the school year is equivalent to almost a half of an academic year. These revisions allow school board members and district leaders to make the best decisions for students at the appropriate time to plan staffing needs, consider budget needs, and identify whatever ways they need to overcome the barriers to engage innovation for continual improvement in preparation for careers and college for students. Thank you.
Would you like to stand for questions?
Yes, ma'am, I do stand for questions. Thank you.
Questions for the conferee? Seeing none, Tracy, thank you for being with us today. We now go to Leah Fleiter, who is here with us today, Executive Director of Advocacy for the Kansas Association of School Boards. Leah, welcome back to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. KSB, just as a review, represents more than 330 boards of education across Kansas, and our members strongly value transparent, accountable public school governance. Senate Bill 384 would cut the State Board of Education's review time for the innovative district applications in half, move the deadline to May 1st, just as districts are preparing for a new school year in the fall, and most concerning, automatically approve applications if the state board cannot act within 45 days. Silence should never equal approval when proposals involve major changes to instructional programs, staffing, budgets, and student services. These changes undermine transparency and community input. With a May 1st deadline and only 45 days for review, parents, educators, and taxpayers may not even be aware of any proposed changes until the end of the school year, if at all. Automatic approval also weakens accountability and creates incentives to game the system rather than submit well-developed, publicly vetted proposals. The current timelines in statute strike an appropriate balance between innovation and public oversight, and we urge you to vote no on Senate Bill 384. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Leah. Any questions for the conferee? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What kind of concerns do you have about the lack of guardrails on these?
The first two innovative districts from our reading of the bill would be approved by the State Board of Ed. But then after that, any further innovation district applications would be approved by a board made up of the innovative school district group. And so you've lost that oversight by the State Board of Ed. I hope that's helpful.
Did that answer your question, Representative? Representative Brantley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this kind of like the redesign we did years ago?
No, thank you, Representative
Didn't
Brantley.
work?
Pardon me, Madam Chair, if it's okay with you. Yeah, you know, I think especially what they were doing in McPherson, because they were one of the innovative districts, did end up kind of morphing into some of the Kansas Can vision and that the redesign. Do you remember back when they were like each was named after a certain Apollo astronaut? Yeah, yeah. So some of that did, after many years, morph into Kansas Can.
So how many of those are still going now?
I don't know. That might be none that I know of off the top of my head, but the department is here. They would probably know. I used to monitor meetings of that group when I first started KSB, and I have not done that for probably 5 or 6 years. So that's. I don't think there are
I'd like to
any
know if any of them
operating
are still going, because I don't believe they are.
Thank you. And I think I misspoke. I was mistaken about something that I said as well. So I will let Frank clarify that and answer Representative Brantley's questions when we're done with questions for Leah. Any other questions for Ms. Fleiter? Seeing none, Leah, thank you for being with us today. Frank, did you want to clarify why I was wrong? And my husband may enjoy watching this clip.
So there was some confusion because we came and presented about the innovative assessment pilot. This is not that. This is completely different. I think assessments are one of the things they can't be exempted from. This did start before the redesign. Dr. Watson was the chair at that time, and then shortly after became commissioner, the group asked to disband, so there are currently no identified innovative districts.
Thank you very much, and I apologize to committee that I was mistaken, not deliberate, not intentionally meant. Any other questions? Okay, I will close that hearing. Today is our last meeting, and I wanted to go ahead and work this bill, which would require an emergency be declared and a vote of the committee. That is 2/3, if I remember correctly, Jason. And that is, this time I'm right. I would make a motion that we work this bill today. Is there a second? A second from Representative Steele. Any discussion on the motion to work the bill? This is not voting for the bill. This is just agreeing to work the bill. Seeing no discussion, I will close my motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Committee, thank you for helping us get through what we need to do today. Are there any amendments that anybody would like to make to this bill? Seeing none, I move adoption of the bill of Senate Bill 384. Is there a second? A second from Representative Brantley. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be opposing this. This actually seems like complete nonsense. We have something that was enacted in, I think I read 2013, that nobody is using anymore, and now we're going to expand it. We're going to shorten up the period for like people to consider it, and remove the qualified professionals at KSDE from that. This just seems nuts.
Any other discussion? Representative Pishney?
Madam Chair, if I could ask Dr. Harwood a question of
Yes.
clarification.
Yes, you may. And thank you for always being willing to take questions.
I did so because he's sitting on the front row today, and it didn't take him long to get to the podium. My question is this, and it kind of ties to Representative Featherston's comments, but also to yours saying there are 0 participants right now. So when this started to where we are today, what caused the demise, if you will, of the participants in the program? And do you believe that by instituting Senate Bill 384, that it might encourage that kind of activity again?
So I did actually talk to Dr. Watson about this when this bill came back up again, since he was the last chair and started it. The reason that they asked to disband is they really couldn't find anything they couldn't do within the law that they needed the law set aside to do. And so there didn't seem to be a need at the time. Since it disbanded, nobody has asked about it. Nobody asked about applying on December 1st when they could have when this bill was being written. And so from a KSD and state board perspective, nobody's brought up a problem with the current timelines. And so I can't answer that question because nobody's asked the question and we said, no, you can't do that because you missed this date.
Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other discussion? Representative Steele.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think maybe sometimes bills can come through and it might seem a bit confusing, but I really had to dive into talking to my superintendent who did write in support of this legislation, and the problem is that this board has disbanded, and because that this board is disbanded, they can't get anything through. And so schools that are wanting to do things aren't necessarily being able to get anywhere. And being that approvals coming in December and having to wait on this long timeline, this really takes out some hindrances, and so we potentially could have more schools be using innovative things. For example, a school district in my district is wanting to bring in more opportunities for students to learn, like having plumbers come in and teaching elective courses. This would allow them to be able to do some of those types of things without having to wait months on end for bureaucratic red tape, essentially. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Frank, did you have a follow-up?
Just a clarification that Jason could probably make. The first 2 have to be approved by the governor, the chair of the Senate Education, and the chair of House Education. That's how the first 2 go. That's how they start the application. Then those applications go to the state board for approval. After there are 2, then the applications go to that board before they go to the state board for approval. The only issue with the state board is the state board only meets once a month. Typically, they try to do things, introduce one month and vote the next. So that would be why the state board was opposed to the 45 days, because it doesn't allow them to follow their typical timeline of needing 60 days to do those type of things. But the only thing that changes in the whole process is moving from December 1st to May 1st. I don't know that that makes a lot of difference. I think the bigger situation is, can the state board follow their regular process and still consider this in 45 days? So, but the other part is still there, that you have to, the first 2 will still have to go to that committee of the governor and the 2 chairs of education.
Thank you, Frank. Any other discussion? Representative Boatman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To be honest, I'm confused by the statements made by Representative Steele, and I would like to ask clarification on what what she said, basically. Like how they can't do anything because there's no board. I don't understand.
Representative Steele.
It's decreasing the amount of time. So instead of just December and just waiting, that doesn't really fall with how school districts do planning. They don't have their next year's budget, their next year's course schedules and everything done in December 1 for that following August. And so moving this to May more closely aligns with how school districts develop things for that next school year, and decreasing this down to 45 days helps remove some of that red tape of knowing. Because, I mean, if you December and you're trying to line, for example, a plumber to help teach a class, an elective for students, you're trying to get that secured December 1, but we don't know anything potentially till August 1. That's a long time. So we're just decreasing timelines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do understand the logic behind moving the date to May to align more with the school year. I'm super objected to shortening the span of time for approval. It seems like a way to either rush approval or to get it by default. I think we've spent a lot of time in this committee adding guardrails and expectations and hurdles to public education. And so suddenly now advocating for the removal of guardrails and red tape is somehow going to do the same thing we've been doing all session by building in guardrails and red tape. I don't agree with that logic at all. Thank you.
You're welcome. Representative Brantley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to clarify too, back when we did the redesign, that was a huge makeover of the schools, and it sounds like this would be more like innovative classes and such for maybe degrees, and the safety nets would be there between the Kansas Board of Education and the state board and the district, if I'm correct. So I believe with all those different safety nets, if they came up with an idea, it would have plenty of filters to go through. Thank you.
One quick follow-up, and then we need to move along. So Representative Steele and then McNorton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think another thing to point out is that this application, the approval is not subject to, it's not subjective, right? If the application is filled out, then it's to be approved. So we're not slowing the process down with that as well. And that is located on page 1 of the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Representative McNorton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for Jason. So just to make sure I understand this, we are amending the timelines and the date. We're not changing the base bill. So it would still be in effect. If we don't pass this, we're just amending the timeline and the date.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, yes, it shortens the review period for the state board to review applications from 90 days to 45 days. And if it is not approved or denied within that 45-day period, it would be deemed approved. And then it changes the application deadline from December 1st to May 1st of the school year prior to the school year they want to operate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason.
Okay, I don't see any more hands, so I'm going to close my amendment by saying I think the innovative districts are a good thing. You've heard me say throughout my time as chair, I want districts to feel like they can try things. I've also said that we learn more from our failures, but my big hope is that we'll measure, we'll learn from what doesn't work, we'll celebrate what does work, and when it's not working, we don't let it go on too long. So if this change helps to foster districts or school buildings want to try something innovative, and the timeline makes more sense for them, then I think this is a good thing. And on that, I close my motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. And I did ask Heather Morgan to come and give us a little brief information about a Senate bill that was put into a House bill. I always try to let you guys know kind of, I've tried so hard, and you guys have made it possible for us to hear as many bills from the Senate. This is one that I didn't get and I won't get, and today is the last day. So I just wanted to give you guys the transparency of Heather can explain that bill very quickly. I believe that Leah was an opponent, and if she wants to give us a couple of sentences on that bill, I'm happy to share equal time. Heather, go ahead.
Senate Bill 341 is a bill that came out of an appropriations meeting last year, asking the community colleges to look at ways that we could save money. One of the things that's been identified by the legislature is that there are some people who believe that the community colleges, technical colleges, and K-12 are being paid the double for some students. So this bill, if passed, would allow us to take a little bit less money for the concurrent rate. Concurrent means taught by a high school teacher in the high school. So currently we have colleges that pay teachers directly, colleges that pay districts that pass the money on to the teacher, districts that don't pass the money on to the teacher and use it for whatever they want. This bill essentially standardizes that practice and says that if you're a high school teacher teaching a course, you're going to get $600. There's a CPI factor on it. If you're a coordinator helping students enroll, there is a maximum amount that you're going to be paid. The benefit for the teachers is when the money is paid to the district and then forced to be paid to the teacher, it's going to be counted in their capers. And so that way that you don't have teachers in two neighboring districts being treated very disparately. The bill was amended for two things. One, the independent colleges wanted to make sure that they were not included. That's an amendment that's been put in, as well as making sure that existing negotiated agreements are not affected. So when a negotiated agreement runs out and a new one is put into place, then that would just be written into the new and negotiated agreement. Dr. Flanders from KBOR called it the Wild West. It's the Wild West on steroids. We've got 276 districts. This is happening all sorts of different ways. So this will standardize it and allow us to potentially save some money and lessen the amount of perceived potential double payment. With that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Any questions for Heather? Heather, thank you very much, and I'll encourage people to reach out to you if they have any questions. Leah, was I remembering correctly that you guys, and I want to be fair and give you give someone who opposed it a turn at.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We opposed the bill, on our usual concerns about it interfering with local control and how we negotiate the agreements between our teachers and the local tech colleges or community colleges or four-year colleges. And we also opposed it because it caps what the teachers can get. In some districts, instead of the 600 or the 1,200, they might be paid more for those. And of course, that hurts our recruitment and retention of qualified teachers. And we also oppose it because we were excluded from the negotiations and didn't know about any of this until the bill was introduced. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you have further questions, please feel free to reach. You can look, Leah, you may have a seat. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you standing.
That's fine.
You can look at who testified in favor or against the bill. Dr. Bonds, I feel really badly because we are past time. I'm the one who asked you guys to come so we could get a gut check on how we are doing, and you've waited so patiently. So I'm going to ask you if you would like to do a brief hit on what you're doing, or if I'm in the chair next year, would you like to come back and get a full informational hearing next year? I'm going to leave it to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I was a faculty member, so I'm really comfortable at doing this at a quick speed, knowing you are ready to go. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon and your interest in discussing developmental education. You have my written testimony in front of you that highlights the changes that we've seen in Kansas high school preparedness. I would just like to highlight It says it's on, a little bit closer. I would just like to highlight the importance of the changes that KBOR has made to our policy beginning in May of 2023 in response to national and state data showing that the traditional approaches to the way that we've offered developmental education are unintentionally slowing students' ability to get to the gateway courses. So you have some printed slides in your handout, and I would just go over this one slide with you. This compares the traditional prerequisite model to the co-requisite model. And you can see on the left-hand side, the traditional prerequisite model shows that it can take our students up to 2 years to even enroll in the college credit-bearing course, versus the co-requisite model, which will become effective for all of our institutions in fall of 2026, has students enroll in credit-bearing courses immediately upon entering into our system. We already have initial data from some of our institutions who piloted this starting in fall of 2025, and it's very positive, and I'd be happy to return in a future year to share more of that data with you. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, and you've been very graceful with us today, and I appreciate that. You're welcome to have a seat. Dr. Harwood, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Okay, thank you all. This is it for this year. I want to thank the committee for a lot of great discussion, a lot of hard work. Michelle is not with us because she's still not well, but she'll be back tomorrow. We do have a gift card to give to her tomorrow as a thank you for all of the work that she's done on behalf of the committee. I would also like to give a big thank you to research. To Elena and Nicole, you're such a blessing and an addition, and so fast on your fingertips to find us what we need to know. I appreciate that very much. Jason, I think I probably burden you more than anyone else, and I appreciate your wisdom and your high professional standards and the excellent advice that you give our committee and the outstanding service. So thank you all for being here. Okay. Getting ready to go. All right, on that note, we are adjourned. Thank you all.